My challenge to evolutionary theory is based on this principled epistemology of the sciences. How do sciences know what their data means? What is the kind of data with which they deal? And what can we say is true about that? And when you compare the kind of data that the Darwinist is met with the kind of data that either a botanist or marine biologist or somebody in the hard sciences is dealing with, you say we don't have inductive access to a living species. We can't run multiple tests to develop an understanding of the nature of this object. It also defies precise mathematical quantification. So there's no inductive access, there's no precise quantification. They're medium sized objects that are themselves sometimes singular in their representation of an entire species. And I thought, um, how should we think about the theory that deals with that kind of evidence, Darwinian theory? Are we drawn more toward a realist judgment about the theory, the nature of the theory, or are we drawn more toward an anti-realist view? And my suggestion uh, is that Darwinism, the kind of theory that it is, because of the paucity of its data, because of the lack of induction and the lack of quantification of the kind of data that it deals with, we should be drawn more toward an anti-realist understanding of what neo-Darwinism is doing as a theory. And this actually, I think, helps the Christian apologetics community because it explains why Darwinism as a theory is different than physics and chemistry.
Right.
Because it has a different data set and it deals with that data set in a different way, in ways that we should be perhaps suspicious about Darwinian conclusions when we're not suspicious about the conclusions of physics and chemistry.
So, okay. So I'm trying to figure out how to land the plane here. So when you're talking about a post-Darwinian design theory, it's if I'm understanding you, basically how I would explain what you're saying is ultimately what you're trying to show is that the philosophical presuppositions that Darwinian evolution sits upon is sort of importing realism, but really you're demonstrating that you would have to have an anti-realist view to make that work. Is that close?
Yeah, it's close, but it's better than that. It's this that many of the tensions in the current intelligent design neo-Darwinism debate assume realism.
Right.
They assume that Darwinism is either literally true or literally false.
Right.
And what my research suggests is that once we put in place the kind of eclecticism that J.P. Moreland desired, and we do it on Thomistic grounds, we note that neo-Darwinism isn't a kind of realist theory. It's more a kind of an anti-realist theory, specifically a kind of empirical construct. And what Bos van Frosland says about empirical constructs is that the assumptions in the framework are more important than the actual data. The assumptions in the framework are more heavily determine the way the data looks. So if we go back to what we said earlier, and what we said was that Meyer says that one of the things that Darwin does is he imposes a new conceptual framework on the data.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is that not only do we have pieces and parts of a new conceptual framework for the data, but understood as an anti-realist empirical construct, that is the most important part of understanding the data, is reframing it according to new assumptions. And when we do that, we get a new paradigm, a post-Darwinian paradigm. And then we bring intelligent design back in to interact with what that new paradigm says.
So what are the intelligent design theorists saying about this? Are they on board? Or are they hesitant about it? Or what are they saying?
Yeah. So when you defend your dissertation, you have a panel of experts, and I had William Dembski and John Lennox and our very own Richard Howe and Jay Richards. And I think at the time, there was there was a question of, well, this is good, but I'm not sure what to do with it, which
Hmm.
may be the response of your audience as well. Um, but I think of it. I think of this as the next step in intelligent design.
Yeah.
Intelligent design,
Yeah.
in its heyday, did the work of clearing the road. I live in a cold climate, so I'm used to driving behind snowplows, and I really think that the work of the intelligent design community was to clear the road of the uh, the presumption of dogmatism that the Darwinists had for decades,
Yeah.
and really showing some of the empirical and maybe theoretical weaknesses of the paradigm, but without a sufficient alternative, right?
Right.
And so I think this actually completes the ID project in a way that
Cool.
now the I will say this, like we said earlier, scientists are more focused on the data than they are the nature of paradigms.
Hmm.
And many in the intelligent design community are scientists,
Right. They're not philosophers.
right? And so this is my explanation of why it seems obvious to me now after looking at this for 12, 13 years. um but this is why something like this might go undetected for so long,
Hmm.
because the scientists who are default realists are arguing about the truth or falsity of a scientific paradigm. And I said, well, scientists don't study scientific paradigms. Philosophers of science study
Hmm.
scientific paradigms. And then the question is, what kind of philosophy of science are you going to use? And then most philosophers of science are either going to be realists or anti-realists.
Right. Right.
But with this sort of Moreland-esque eclecticism in place, we can say, no, I'm a realist when it comes to physics and chemistry. But when I look at the kind of data and the kind of access we have to natural history, it draws me toward anti-realism, specifically Van Frossen's constructivism.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it gives the Christian community a different way of arguing ultimately for a Christian worldview,
Hmm.
but in a way that transcends the sort of tit for tat arguing over specific data points, because
Yeah.
there's really a debate to be had at the larger theoretical level.